FPL Gameweek 35. 4 game weeks left, very exciting. Some of us have got 2 or 3 chips left, some of us have no chips left. So what should we be doing with our teams? In this video series, we've been looking at the popular players. And if you only pick the popular players that are doing well, you really should easily finish top 5% globally. Now, some content creators and some managers like to go for differentials to try and make rank gain. But if there's a popular player that you don't own that does well, that is going to really hurt your rank. Now, it's fine not to have the popular players, but you need to think which popular player don't you want. And if you only go for popular players, I can't get my words out. If you only go for the popular players, Peter Piper picked them. If you only go for the popular players, then you really should do all right. And I think top 5% is very doable, which means you'll do all right in your mini leagues. And if there's only 10, 20 people in your mini league, good chance of finishing first or second, I'd say. Oh, what a ramble. What a ramble. Right, let's look at some stuff. It's early morning. I was supposed to record this last night, but I ran out of time. So I'm trying to do this before work. Right, let's get going. I normally like to start by looking at the net transfers for the game week we're in. However, because wildcards are getting played and a load of people are coming off a free hit, this is looking a bit silly at the moment. But what is worth saying is Cherky, a lot of people are bringing him in. He's a very good player. People are bringing in Gibbs-White because he's done well the last 2 game weeks. We'll have a look at him. Haaland's coming back into fashion. But these numbers are pretty meaningless-ish because of the chips getting played. And the most sold, just so I can say who's most sold, happens to be João Pedro. I then like to look at the ownership levels at my rank, which is 3.7%, which is okay. It's what I'm going for. But again, this is largely meaningless this week. It'll mean a lot more next week, I think. But Fernandes is still the most popular, totally worth having. And then we've got Gabriel's worth having. Thiago, I think, slightly on the slide. And then we've got Haaland, who's growing in popularity. I normally waffle about these 2 pages quite a bit. Today, not going to bother. We're going to look at the players now, starting with the goalkeepers. And the order I'm showing them is my approximate best guess at the moment of how much they're going to hurt you if they do as well as expected and you don't own them. And I'm going to be a bit all over the place because I'm going to try and say if you're wildcarding then this, if you're not then that. So let's see what happens. So for Raya, if you're wildcarding, totally worth getting him. If you're wildcarding and bench boosting, there is an option to not go without him. And I've seen lots of people not going with him, but if you can afford him, I really think he's the safe one to have. Not only because he's the safest, but you really want 3 Arsenal players if you're wildcarding, and there just isn't a great choice of who to get. So he's pretty much in there. Totally would not get Kelleher, but if you've got him as your main keeper, that's fine. Could get something in 2 of the next 4. Unless you've got 5 transfers, I would not waste a transfer moving him on. Wouldn't get Roofs. If you've got him, he's your main keeper, okay, you can just play him. But Sunderland haven't been so great recently. Got thrashed by Nottingham Forest 5-0 last game week. Would not be investing in him. But he's away to Wolves, could get something there. But wouldn't get him. So Verbruggen, if you're wildcarding this week and you're bench boosting next game week, then he's at home to Wolves. He's alright as one of your keepers. And even if you're bench boosting in 37, he's alright against Leeds. So, I should have said this earlier. If you're wildcarding this week, that's one strategy. If you're wildcarding and bench boosting, and they're your 2 chips, you should probably bench boost game week 36, which is next game week. If you've still got your triple captain, you want to play your triple captain in the double game week, which means wildcard this week, triple captain 36, bench boost 37 if you've got all 3 left. So I'll try and say that again. Triple captain's the most important, as in where you're going to play it. You're going to play it in 36 in the double, fine. So if you've got wildcard and triple captain, that's easy. If you've got wildcard and bench boost, wildcard this week, bench boost next week, I think that's about it. It's weird, I think my team looks alright, but I'm still going to wildcard because I've got it. But if I didn't have my wildcard, it wouldn't bother me. Pickford, there's no excuse to get Pickford. If you've got him, that's fine. That said, I am highly likely going to get Pickford myself because I really like Pickford and this game's about having fun. So if I can afford it on my wildcard, I'm probably going to get Raya and Pickford. I'm going to be bench boosting in 37. Pickford at home. Great. I'm happy with that. I like Pickford. So Darlow, nice and cheap, Leeds. And Leeds fixtures are actually very nice. I know it says Spurs doesn't look so nice, but Spurs are really soft. I wouldn't worry about them. So whatever your strategy, if you want to get Darlow as your second keeper, that is absolutely fine. Whether you're bench boosting 36 or 37. Henderson. If you're wildcarding, you could get him because he's doubling next game week. And we don't know which Crystal Palace players are going to be playing both game weeks because they're still involved in Europe. So any Crystal Palace player is a bit of a gamble. And the second game is away to Man City. If you want to completely ignore Crystal Palace, I think that's fine. If you want to get 3 because you're wildcarding or bench boosting or like a gamble, that's okay, but that really is a big gamble. It's feasible. They're going to lose 1-0 at home to Everton. Henderson gets 2 points. Then they get thrashed at Man City and he gets 1 point or no points. So, yes, they could keep a clean sheet against Everton and they could end up getting 10 points in total. So that is a big gamble. 5.1 million is quite expensive. Personally, I very much doubt I'm going to get Henderson, but he's fine to get if you're bench boosting next game week, and I fully understand why people want him. Wouldn't buy Martinez at the moment. Villa are distracted with Europe. Spurs and Burnley okay, but the last two are no good. If you've got Sanchez, that's fine. They've got new management at the moment, so Chelsea I would expect to be a little bit better. I wouldn't go buying him, but if I had him, it wouldn't bother me having him. And then Dubravka, another piece of bench fodder. Wouldn't go buying him, but if he's your second keeper and you're not wildcarding, but you're bench boosting next game week, home to Villa, that's fine. I wouldn't waste a transfer moving him out. So, if you're wildcarding and then you're bench boosting, if you're wildcarding with no bench boost, you get rare. If you're wildcarding and bench boosting, if you're bench boosting next game week, you get Raya and then probably Henderson, otherwise for Bruggen. If you've still got your triple captain, then if you're wildcarding, it'd either be Raya and Verbruggen, if you're trying to be sensible, or else you could get possibly Verbruggen and Darlow and be saving a bit of money that you can spend elsewhere. It's the beginning of the day and I feel like my voice is going already. That's not good. I've got meetings. Right, defenders, Gabriel. Nearly everyone's got Gabriel. The most important Arsenal player to have. You really should get him. Even if you're not wildcarding, you want to be getting Gabriel. Because if he does well, he's going to be hurting your rank. Right, I look at these three together. For Man City, the best defender to get is O'Reilly. But if you've already got Gahey and you're not wildcarding and you've not got lots of transfers, probably not worth switching to O'Reilly because there's probably other things that you're better off using your transfers for. So the expectation is between now and the end of the season, O'Reilly will outscore Gahey, but we don't know that, and they might be very, very similar. If you want to get both, that's fine. I have seen some wildcards people have published online with both defenders, but the trouble is there's two other Man City players you'd probably rather have. So O'Reilly if you can, but if you've got Gahey, I wouldn't worry about it. There's not a world I would buy Virgil van Dijk at the moment. If you've got him, he's absolutely fine to keep. But if you're wildcarding, wouldn't bother getting him. And if you've not got Gabriel, then Virgil van Dijk to Gabriel's fine. If you've not got a Man City defender, then Virgil to O'Reilly's fine. Senesi, I'd be fine to have him. Wouldn't go buying him though, but he can pick up points in any game. Sunderland haven't been so great recently. Mukulele's only 4.6 million. I wouldn't go buying him, not even on a wild card. But if you've got him, he's not awful. Hill likes Senesi, and he's nice and cheap. So would I get him on a wild card? No, I don't think so, even though he's cheap. But 3 of the 4 fixtures are okay. So Anderson, he's nice and cheap. And if you're wildcarding and then bench boosting, at home to Bournemouth in 36 is okay. Away to Wolves in 37 is okay. Now you can probably find 5 other midfielders that you'd rather have, but if you want him on a wildcard, absolutely reasonable, no problem there. Van Heck is also very good on the wildcard. Home to Wolves 36, away to Leeds 37. Probably a little bit safer than Anderson, 0.1 million more. He's quite nice. And then Chow, I wouldn't go buying him, but if you've got him, that's all right. The fixtures aren't awful. And then second page of defenders, Tarkowski's quite expensive, and there are plenty of other defenders you can be choosing from. If you've got him, that's fine. If you're wildcarding, then bench boosting, then he's all right against Palace, and he should be all right at home to Sunderland. I've looked at wildcard with potentially having him because I quite like Pickford, therefore I quite like Everton players in general. I don't know if I'm going to get him or not, but he's okay. But he is quite expensive, and there are plenty of other defenders to choose from. If you're wildcarding, you want 3 Arsenal players. If you're not wildcarding and you've got lots of transfers, it's nice to have 3 Arsenal players. Saliba is one of the 4 obvious choices to get. Not very exciting. He's not especially highly owned. Shouldn't hurt your rank too much. But he's a nice, easy one to get in there. So if you're wildcarding, he's fine. If you're not wildcarding, there are probably other moves that are more important than that. Aldereti's nice and cheap. If you've got him, that's fine. If you're wildcarding and you need the money, he's all right. I wouldn't expect much from the bench boost there in 36, 37. So Crystal Palace are doubling. And as we mentioned with Henderson, if you buy them, it's a bit of a gamble because the second game's away to Man City and we don't know which Crystal Palace players are going to play. I've only got Palace defenders and the goalkeeper showing them as popular. The midfielders and forwards, really risky regarding who's going to play, and none of them are very popular at the moment, so we don't need to worry about them. So it's a gamble, and I've looked at my wild card having 0, 1, 2, 3 Crystal Palace players, and I really don't know which way I'm going to go at the moment. It's absolutely fine to ignore Crystal Palace, but if you want to get them, you can. Personally, I think Munoz and Lacroix are the best 2 to get, Lacroix rather. If you only got 1, it's actually quite close. Munoz probably just about, but he is 0.7 more expensive. And then Electric Steve, he's fine for bench fodder if you're wildcarding. Wouldn't get him. If you're bench boosting, I wouldn't have him as one of my players. So Leeds have got some nice fixtures. So Strike and Justin, very, very perfectly reasonable to have. Home to Burnley this week, that's good. And then if you're bench boosting, away to Spurs is all right, or at home to Brighton, that's okay as well. So either of those, if you need someone cheap and play them in the bench boost, they're okay. And then 2 more Crystal Palace, Mitchell and Camvot. Any 1, 2, 3 or 4 of those Palace players are okay. Reasonable chance they're going to play both games. Hopefully at least 60 minutes. May get a clean sheet. So if I was wildcarding, and I am, then I would definitely get Gabriel. I would definitely get O'Reilly. And then I'm tempted by Van Heck, so that's 3. Of these, I'm tempted by Tarkowski, tempted by Saliba, tempted by Munoz and Lacroix, tempted by Justin. I could even go for Camvot there. He's only 4.5 million. So there's a good choice to choose from. 4 game weeks left. None of them, apart from the first few on the previous page, are super popular, so you don't need to worry about them hurting your rank. For the midfielders, Fernandes, the most popular player in the game at the moment. Next game week, it's probably going to be Haaland, but this game week, it's Fernandes. You need to be a special sort of person to not have him in your squad. If he does well, he's going to really hurt your rank. And he may just tick over with 4s and 5s for the rest of the season. But he's probably going to have at least one decent score in there. Home to Liverpool. It doesn't matter that it's Liverpool. I know it's not a derby, but it's a little bit like a derby. And that's often a high-scoring game one way or the other. Totally worth having. Semenyo, very good player. Worth having, except there's an alternate Man City player that you want to be getting on wildcard. If you've got Semenyo, unless you've got loads of transfers, there's probably no need to move him on. There's better things to do with your transfers. But if you're wildcarding, I'd say get Cherky instead. So Wilson, he's been net sold by 114,000. Yeah, their fixtures aren't great. I have considered him on a wild card. I've had him the last few game weeks. At home to Bournemouth in 36, bench boost is fine. Away to Wolves is fine. Downside with Wilson is he is out of contract and expected to leave at the end of the season. There is a chance he's going to get fewer minutes, and there are some decent midfielders to pick. But if I had Wilson, or you're going to get him as wild card, that's absolutely fine. You don't have to feel compelled to get him, though, even though he's very popular. Rodgers, so net 13,000 have brought him in. They are still in Europe, Aston Villa. They got that distraction, but Rodgers is probably still going to get good minutes. They're home to Spurs, who are very soft at the moment, so that's fine for this game week. And if you're wildcarding now and bench boosting next game week away to Burnley, that's okay. None of my drafts have any Aston Villa players in. I've got no interest. Personally, I wouldn't go buying him. If you want to, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. Last 2 games against Liverpool and Man City, 7.5 million. You're kind of booking in a transfer there, I think. If you've got him, that's fine. You don't need to move him on. Personally, I wouldn't get him on a wild card. So Rice, he's one of the 4 obvious Arsenal players. So we've got Raya, Gabriel, Saliba and Rice. It just depends on what your money looks like. Like whether you go for Rice or Saliba as your third, if you're wildcarding, it doesn't really matter. Now you can gamble on someone else. Saka is likely to play if he doesn't get injured, in which case he's could well be very nice, but at least at the moment he's very lowly owned, so you don't need to fear him. And it could be that game week 37, 38, that's the time to transfer Saka in, because we know if he's doing all right or not. And then someone like Rodgers, you could free up the space selling him if you had Rodgers. It's fine to get Saka, but I think it's a risk that for myself is probably not worth taking. So, Arsenal players, the best 3 is probably Raya, Gabriel, Rice, but Saliba instead of Rice, not much in it. You don't have to get 3 Arsenal players, but nearly everyone who's wildcarding will be. Gibbs-White, net brought in by 215,000. He's had some good weeks recently, and the past 2 game weeks have been very good. Nottingham Forest is still involved in Europe. Gibbs-White is probably going to be playing all the minutes, but the fixtures aren't great. They're not awful, but they're not great either. He's been in none of my wildcards. No intention of getting him. If you've got him, that's fine. If you want to get him, that is not a problem. So Cherky, 237,000 net brought in so far. If you're wildcarding, you want to be getting Cherky. Very good. If you're not wildcarding and you are able to get him in, that's fine. No problem there. Szoboszlai net sold by 59,000. Personally, I wouldn't be bringing him in. If I had him, he's all right to keep, but he's absolutely nothing special. He's okay to move on, but he could easily tick on. And with Salah out, if Salah is out injured, Szoboszlai should be on penalties. But I think there are other midfielders I'd rather have, would not have him on a wild card. Anderson, wouldn't have him on a wild card, but if you've got him, he's fine. He ticks along nicely. Dewsbury-Hall, quite like him. He's been on some of my wild card drafts because I'm bench boosting 37 and he's at home to Sunderland. If I wasn't bench boosting 37, I totally would not be considering him at all. If you've got him, he's fine. Unless you're bench boosting 37 though, would not be bringing him in. And then second page midfielders, these are less important. Mbeumo's been net sold by 92,000. Not done much recently. Unsure about his minutes. But Kuna was injured. Maybe his minutes are going to be better. There's no scenario at all where I'd bring in Mbeumo. Dango, he's all right. So at home to West Ham this week might be all right. If you're bench boosting in 37, you could get him at home to Palace. But unless that's what's happening, would not get an Odango. So Akafar's been very popular. Net brought in by 123,000, but he does have a bit of a knock, I think, on his calf muscle. So we don't even know if he's going to be playing this game week against Burnley. So they are the game tomorrow. So before the deadline, there's a chance of a team leak. But I would assume for now he's not playing, so we would not bring in Okafar at the moment. If you've got him, I'd say he's fine to hold unless we find out he's definitely out. But I wouldn't risk bringing him in. Gross is quite nice because Brighton's fixtures are quite nice. And if you're bench boosting, then in 36 he's at home to Wolves and 37 he's away to Leeds. He's not some fantastic player, but he's got a reasonable chance of getting 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 points. And if you wanted him for one of your midfielders, that's okay. And then King's bench fodder. Now, I'm only really showing popular players. Other midfielders that you could consider if you wanted to is there's Casemiro for Man United. He's been doing well recently. You've got Bruno Guimaraes back from injury for Newcastle. He'd be all right to consider as well. You can choose, of course, any player in the system. If you choose a player that's lowly owned, if you didn't have them and they do well, it doesn't matter. If they do well, that's great for you. but I kind of think it's the popular players you really need to consider. So on a wild card, which I am, who would I get? I would definitely get Fernandes. I would definitely get Cherky. And then possibly Rice, tempted by Dewsbury-Hall. And then over here, possibly Gross. And then I've had Casemiro the last few game weeks. I'm very tempted to keep Casemiro. But I'm also thought about Bruno Guimaraes myself. He's all right. So quite a few to choose from. Now for forwards, good choice of forwards in my opinion. Haaland, everyone's going to want him. Net brought in by 182,000 as of last night when I was putting this together. If you still get your triple captain, he's going to be the most popular triple captain next game week. He may well be the most captained every game week between now and the end of the season. Perfectly fine choice. You're playing a very dangerous game if you don't have Haaland. You may get away with it, but it's a bit dangerous. So Thiago, if you've got him, that's fine. Probably going to score some goals. He's a good player. If you're wildcarding and bench boosting, if you're wildcarding this week, bench boosting next game week, away to Man City, I probably wouldn't bother getting him. Last week of the season's away to Liverpool. But if you're bench boosting game week 37 when he's home to Palace, then I'd say he is all right to have. Bowen, very solid player, been doing well recently. Even if, so he's at home to Arsenal next game week, and if you're bench boosting then, he's still okay to have. Away to Newcastle, maybe slightly better. If you've got him, definitely worth keeping, no problem there. If you're wildcarding, he's a perfectly reasonable choice. He's been in a lot of my drafts, I do quite like him. So Watkins, slightly net brought in. Villa is still in Europe. Next two fixtures are nice. After that, not so nice. Personally, I wouldn't bring him in, but he may do well the next couple of game weeks. But another reason not to bring him in is I think there are other forwards I'd rather have. So I really like João Pedro. New management. I am expecting him, assuming him to be fit. If he stays fit, I'm expecting him to do well. Home to Forest, then game week 37 at home to Spurs, which is, they're not best friends, Spurs and Chelsea, in case you didn't know. The only slight downside of him is game week 37. At the weekend in that game week, before he plays Spurs, he's got the FA Cup final. And if he got injured then, he's going to be missing out. And I'm bench boosting in game week 37. So I may well not get him for myself because I don't want to be a risk being a player down on my bench boost. But if he didn't have the cup final, I think I'd definitely get him. And if I wasn't bench boosting 37, I think I'd probably get him. And then another very popular one, net brought in by 73,000, is Calvert-Lewin. Nice and cheap, Leeds have nice fixtures. He gets lots of chances to score goals, which is good. The only downside is he keeps missing his chances. But he is popular. I understand why he's popular. He's fine to get. Whether you're bench boosting 36, 37, or even not bench boosting at all, assuming you're on wildcard. If you're not wildcarding, the only reason I'd bring him in would be to save money because there's another upgrade elsewhere you want. Krupi Jr. as bench fodder, he's fine, but I wouldn't bring him in. So Welbeck, some people are bringing him in if they're bench boosting next game week at home to Wolves. Maybe a few if they're bench boosting away to Leeds. Personally, I wouldn't get him, but he's all right to have. If you've got him, that's fine. And then Mane and Mark Gahey, they're just bench fodder. Don't go getting them if you're wildcarding and bench boosting. So, for me, it's 3 out of Haaland, Thiago, Bowen, João Pedro. But the FA Cup final is slightly putting me off João Pedro. So I'm probably going to go Haaland, Thiago, Bowen. But I've not decided for sure. But many people are going Calvert-Lewin, which is absolutely fine. So if you went Haaland, Calvert-Lewin, and one of Thiago, Bowen, João Pedro, that is absolutely fine as well. And you save money to invest elsewhere. Bench order, this is my suggested bench order. You do whatever you like. Regarding the goalkeepers, I suggest you've got Rare, you play him. Then it would be Darlow, Roofs, Kelleher, Verbruggen, Martinez, Sanchez, Henderson, Pickford, Dubravka. Regarding the other players we've just looked at, I've put 6 aside as potential captains. But apart from those, my preferred order, this is order of playing. I've called it bench order, but the order I show it is my preferred order of playing. It'd be Cherky, Semenyo, Gabriel, O'Reilly, Gahey, João Pedro, Rice, Rogers, Gibbs-White, Saliba and Bremo, Virgil van Dijk, Strike, Justin, Senesi, Hill, Wilson, Szoboszlai, Welbeck, Dango, Anderson, Gross, Van Heck, Dewsbury-Hall, Tarkowski, Mukulele, Alderete, Chow, Krupi Jr., Okafor. Now, if you find out he's definitely fit, you could bump him up the list quite a long way. But if he's got a knock, what if he comes on for the last 15 minutes? Totally not worth having. What if he comes on, but actually, oh no, he's not fit and he comes off again? So if he's still flagged, he's a bit of a risk to be starting if you've got another decent player. But if he ends up getting 90 minutes, he's totally worth playing. And then Lacroix, Munoz, Canvot, Anderson, Electric Steve, Mane, Mitchell, King, Mark Gahey. They're not going to be playing these last two. Possibly. Don't know why I said that last bit. Captaincy. Haaland, I think, is going to be the most popular captain, and he's a completely reasonable captain. Away to Everton. He's not got far to travel. Could be a perfectly good fixture to have him. Fernandes at home to Liverpool. Completely reasonable captain. And if I thought he was the most captain, I'd be comfortable going there. But I think it's going to be Haaland. I'm going to be captaining Haaland. If you want to go somewhere else for whatever reason, Thiago at home to West Ham. He could be all right. Bowen away to Brentford. Same match. He could be fine. Watkins at home to Spurs. Not because I think Villa are particularly good. I think Spurs particularly aren't very good. Now, new manager, only had a few games to Zerbi, but they do have major important players missing Spurs. So you could go for Watkins if you wanted a bit of fun. Or even Calvert-Lewin, but you have to be a special sort of person to captain him. He could do really well against Burnley. He will almost certainly get quite a lot of chances. It's just a case of how is he going to find to miss this goal chance. But he could do all right. Absolute safest is captaining Haaland and vice-captaining Fernandes. And there we have it, my early morning waffle on... I could do some waffles. My early morning waffle on Game Week 34, what I think about it and what you might want to do with your chips. Thank you very much for watching. Later on tonight, I hope to put out a video saying what I might do with my team, but who knows, I could change my mind anyway. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.